The following message is transmitted at the request of local authorities.
Alright, welcome back to MMG. You guys like that intro? Was it creepy? Was it some good fear porn? Alright, so I'm going to talk about all kinds of news. I'm going to talk about Davos, this pandemic, this virus, right? And just a lot of things that are going on and being said by a lot of elites. First of all, listen, guys. There's two things that sell the best. One is sex, right? And then the second is fear porn. Um, Humans are wired for fear and sex, but the reason we really enjoy watching like end of the world movies, conspiracies, anything that causes fear, that may cause harm to you, is because for thousands of years humans, back in the day, had to constantly have their guard up, from roaming marauders to long live the king, right? So what I'm trying to say is, for thousands of years, the world was much more dangerous for people, right? Um, People migrated. This was before technology, before the Industrial Revolution, right? When we were basically living in caves or making huts. So back in the day when people were nomads, right? We would go from one place to another hunting, and you would come across other people who may be harmful, or animals, right? So it's wired into our nervous system to pay attention to what may come to harm us. It's also something that we need and we want, because, these days there's not that much danger. So the it comes out as entertainment, but we demand it for our survival, right? Also, back in the day, if you didn't store for the winter, right, and you didn't, there was a pre-farming era, and then there was even the farming era where you had to store all the meat with salt, or you had to farm and store away for winter. That's called savings, by the way, today. And so you had this fear of winter is coming, right? So what I'm trying to say is fear porn, it sells. It gets clicks, it gets views, and do things get blown out of proportion on the internet? Yes, absolutely, because people make money off of it, right? So am I doing that right now? A little bit with the thumbnail, right? With the clickbait title and the thumbnail, but I have to do what I have to do to get people's attention. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to talk about it. So it's not like false advertising, right? Um but I just want to let you guys know, it seems like it's World War Z, that movie uh with the zombies, and this virus spreads, right? Uh, it almost sounds like that's what's about to break out. I don't think it's going to be that bad. This form of virus has been around. The last one was SARS, or no, Ebola. Ebola was Ebola, and the other one that was similar was the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, coronavirus, and that thing spread all around the world as well. So it might just be not, thousands of people might get infected, hundreds may die. Although it's actually spreading very quickly right now, this coronavirus in China. So let's take a look at that. So China quarantines city of 11 million as Hong Kong confirms second case of coronavirus. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is because of the markets. They're blaming this for the market sell-off, even though that was going to come either way. But this is a good way to divert attention from, like, let's say, the underlying real issues, from debt to repo to trillion-dollar companies now, a bubble stock market, and QE. I'm going to talk about that anyways later. But they're sort of saying if there's a sell-off, it'll be due to this, right? Although it does affect the Chinese economy, right? So I lived in China during SARS. It is scary. It also practically shut down the economy for several weeks as people stopped going out and stopped traveling. China's economy is the second largest in the world, right? So here's total wealth, or you could say the size of economies, right? Here's United States. It's about 30% of the world, but China's coming up on 20. And Japan is actually third, which is very surprising because it's just a small island, right? But they do have a lot of manufacturing. They have probably the best auto manufacturing company in the world, at least. But that is surprising. I thought Germany would be larger, and the United Kingdom, but apparently they're not. So I just wanted to show that. So it does matter, right?
Challenging the system and saying, why should I support free enterprise? Why should I support capitalism?
Okay, is it the role, though, of all three of you that
Success, you're going.
All right, so here's the article. Hong Kong has reportedly confirmed a second case of coronavirus. More details to come. That was 1530, 1500, just 3 for USC. Well, it's 3 p.m. After praising all China's efforts to contain the outbreak, the WHO Director General announced that the emergency committee would delay its decision on whether to declare the coronavirus a major health emergency of international concern because the committee wants more information. It's unclear exactly why they're hoping to learn between today and tomorrow, but with the pace at which the virus is spreading, it's possible nearly 1,000 cases will have been identified by then. And I was listening to this. I can't play it anymore. It's weird, but I they're I don't know. They seem concerned, but at the same time, it seems like they don't know what's going on yet. But they don't know if it's droplets or if it's airborne. It's probably droplets. So what's droplets? When you sneeze, right? A little bit of fluid that comes out. like a drop, and then someone touches it with their hands, then you might touch your face or near your eyes or mouth or even nose or ears, and that's how the virus enters your body. If it's airborne, then that's what's that's the pandemic. That's when it like spreads across the world, and millions and millions get taken out. I don't think it's probably not airborne because it would have spread much quicker. By now there would be tens of thousands. I mean, maybe there is. It's too early to tell. But it's probably not airborne. But it can mutate to be airborne. Of course, if that happens, markets will tank. So, they're starting to go to airports and they are screening people as they get off flights. Chinese authorities have reportedly suspended all outbound air and train travel from the city, expanding on their that nobody leave and nobody enter the city in central China, which has population of 11 million, making it larger than New York City. No flights have taken off from that airport for the last 40 minutes. So, screenings for virus have been expanded to airports in Atlanta, Chicago, New York, elsewhere. Russia has tightened its border of Chinese. So here's the thing. I mean, right now, for the short term, before they can figure out what it is, they're shutting down flights and tightening borders and not letting people in and out. So just from that, I mean, it's not good for the economy, but I don't know how serious it is, right? Neither do they. But they're acting like it can be very, very serious. So I was saying in the chats, if they're constantly talking about it in the news, then it's probably not that serious. Because if it was very serious, they wouldn't want to cause a panic, right? And they wouldn't talk too much about it. That's what I believe personally. Although you never know, because this is an international problem, right? And they can't ignore it when it's this big, and it started in China. Outbound transportation of a capital city is unprecedented in China since 1949. Wuhan is home to 11 million more people than any city in US and many in Europe. Think about how challenging the quarantine will be. So, I mean, if you've seen like zombie movies or any movies, at first, it kind of works. There's curfews, this and that. But once people start running out of food and stuff and they can't go out, things get chaotic. And that's how it could spread even more, right? So, listen, I mean, it could be serious if it's airborne. And if one out of, let's say, even 100 die, because what it does is it causes the flu, a severe flu. And if your immune system can't fight it off, or sometimes if you have a strong immune system, it can't fight it off. I don't know. It depends on the virus. Then a percentage of people, because there's been a few people who've gotten this virus, but they haven't died. But again, it mutates from person to person, or who knows? Maybe. So I did some reports in college about antibiotics, and the more and more people take antibiotics and they don't take it as prescribed, like they don't finish the full cycle, the weaker the antibiotics become, and the stronger the viruses become because they adapt to the antibiotics. So and not just that, like I don't want to get into the other thing, right? Vaccines, because it's like totally censored, right? So, but the thing is, these you never know. There could be one day a virus that just can't be stopped, and it'll turn out to be like the modern day Black Plague. And then you get all conspiratorial. That's a way to depopulate whatever. But right now, I don't know, guys. I just don't know. I'm just giving you guys updates. As Beijing scrambles to contain the coronavirus as the number of cases discovered in China around the world soars, Japan Times reports that government officials have canceled some Olympic qualifying events in China. Just as we suspected, Chinese authorities have revised the death toll for the Wuhan coronavirus outbreak to 17 on Wednesday, meaning that in under 24 hours, the death toll has practically doubled, that's pretty quick in one day. I know 17 doesn't sound like a lot, but if 17 have died, that means there's probably thousands and thousands of people who have it. And who knows what the lag time is. So with the flu, right, you'll get it and it might take a couple days for you to have some serious symptoms, and then another like week for you to become severely, well, I wouldn't say a week. Depends on your immune system, right? Some people could probably walk around with it for a couple weeks. Some people within 3 days are just better. And meanwhile, Russia made reports claim that a passenger from Shanghai has been hospitalized, a sign that the virus may now have spread to Russia. And it's also in Washington, in the U.S., the state. Novel coronavirus deaths rise. Yeah. So, this is interesting, right? Some good fear porn, some fun, until it's serious. But, what did Trump say? We have it totally under control, Trump says. Here's a map of it spreading in China. So, you have to understand the population of China is enormous and it's very dense. In the past decade, like more than half the population has gone into urban cities where, I mean, you're just in cities with tens of millions of people. So if it ever becomes airborne, and China was the starting location, it really could spread, right? Like throughout the entire country, or at least the major cities. And then from there, as Chinese like to travel and take pictures of everything, it could travel around the world very, very quickly. And, a lot of foreigners go to China as well. I mean, China's the second largest economy in the world. A lot of things are being built there, this and that. And you have contractors, a lot of contractors who build buildings and railroads and whatnot. Things that no longer are being built in the U.S., really, because of regulations. Which is funny because I was just watching a video from Davos, right? The economic forum where all the elites fly to in their Lear jets and then complain about global warming and then talk about economics and plan for our futures. Jamie Dimon was talking about how in the U.S., essentially, there's so many regulations, you can't build anything. To build a bridge, it takes you like a year. Like in China, in California, they've been trying to build a high-speed rail, but they can't even get it started. So here's the newsroom of Wolfpack, of MMG, and I post a lot of important things, funny things. A lot of you guys like it a lot. So, where's the video? Anyways, I posted the JP Morgan interview with Jamie Dimon, right? He's the CEO of JP Morgan, largest bank in US, and he was talking. The problem with these CEOs and elitists and bureaucrats and all that, I honestly do not know. So when I'm talking about the private market, right, the CEOs, I don't know if they are as dumb as they seem to be, or they just have an agenda, so they will compromise their own beliefs and just say a narrative, right? And then they just seem dumb, right? So Jamie Dimon had it half right. I did post it in here. Yeah, it's right here, this interview. And he's talking about how how policymakers, right, government, need to make better policies to have economic expansion and growth. But he doesn't get it. If there was just less policies, period, then you'd have more freedom and then more growth. They contradict themselves nonstop when they talk, and they seem like complete idiots to someone who understands economics. Unfortunately, most people coming out of Ivy League schools and economists, they're literally all socialists. And that's what Keynesianism leads to, is essentially socialism. But either way, the U.S. is already socialist. It's been socialist. There's been no free market here for many decades. Anyway, but the fact that he doesn't even know that in the first place, right? Maybe he won't talk about that. But it doesn't matter because he contradicts himself when he talks about policies. He says, well, you need to manage better and create policies that work. Okay, well, let's say this president has good policies that do work, but the next one won't because it's a democracy. And obviously, the public's pretty dumbed down from publicly ran schools, right? And they will always vote for free stuff, and that leads to bad decisions because the politicians don't care about the long term. They only care about the short term, so they stay in power. And if you can't understand that, then I don't know how you're running the largest bank in the world, right? Or is it Bank of America? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's JP now. Anyways, it's largest in the U.S. So actually, the largest bank in the world is in China, believe it or not. But who knows? Those numbers could be fake. Who knows? There's a bunch of bank runs being that are happening in China right now, actually, but we don't see it in the Western news, right? Nothing leaves there. Anyways, let me get back to Jamie here, and I listened to these. I listened to some of these Davos interviews, and I mean the hypocrisy and they contradict themselves constantly. They do not understand economics. So this is what scares me. This is the point. The point is, are they really that stupid? Or do they just have an agenda? I want to lean more towards the older guys and the guys like Jamie Dimon. I think they have an agenda. I do believe they're very smart. Okay, and they understand economics. They understand Austrian economics. It's just that the problem is free markets don't benefit them. Socialism does. That's why all these it's funny, right? Corporations push socialism. Well, there's a reason behind that, so they can keep their monopolies because there's no competition in socialism. And then, but it's funny because he did say that. Listen, you'll have commissars, right? So government officials walk into board of directors and kind of tell the companies how to manage their businesses. That's what they did in Russia, right? And then companies will become political. I mean, they already have on their own, right? The big tech giants. And that's why they're all going to fail in the end, just like all the companies failed in Russia, right? That's why the Russian economy is just, it's tiny. If you look at it, people think Russia's so powerful because, landmass and military, but they're not. Their economy is just, I mean, they're all poor there. The only people who are wealthy there are bureaucrats or criminals, right? And there's not a big difference. Trump says in Davos speech that he could get used to negative interest rates. That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Obviously, if negative interest rates worked, they would, Europe would be booming, but Europe is weaker than the U.S. The only reason U.S. stock market's rising and everything seems fine right now is because, one is repo, right, not QE, and then the fact that the U.S. has the highest interest rates. Now, you have to understand, with negative interest rates, that's good for government, right, and for government spending. The problem is that it destroys the economy. I mean, negative. Who's gonna lend money to anyone? I don't know. Why would you lend someone money if they don't have to pay you interest? You lose money because they actually get paid to borrow money. That's insane, right? But this is how insane the world's become, and this is how. We're at the final stages of this Ponzi scheme, right? Eventually, they will come out with MMT, modern monetary theory, and inject the economy with helicopter money. Literally, give the plebs like welfare every month, and then hyperinflation will eventually pop up. And they don't expect it because they've been trying to get more inflation. They can't. That's because of the surmounting debt, because there's interest on the debt. But once all the debt defaults, and it will. That's when you start getting the inflation. And Trump just wants the Fed to keep lowering rates so we could compete and get that cheap money, because he's viewing it from a real estate investor perspective. Well, yeah, give us that the cheap money so we could build infrastructure, bring back jobs, grow the government with Space Force. Another black hole. So, in a way, for the short term, what everything Trump is doing is good. For the long term, it's very, very bad. At this point, I think they're just keeping the plates spinning, guys, and the music going because they don't know what to do. And they're so scared to death of a correction. And, I'm listening to these guys at Davos, and they're all hinting towards a huge correction. Except this guy. The boom. Except this guy. You guys can watch this interview as well. So Bridgewater, right? CIO. It's not the chief financial officer, but it's the CIO, co-CIO. Anyway, this idiot. He literally said this time it's different. This time it's different, guys. That's what they always say at the peak of a bubble. And this is Bridgewater, right? Anyways. Well, that's Ray Dalio's hedge fund. At the same time, he was saying, Ray Dalio saying that gold's going to go over 2,000 this year, which is amazing. We finally have the largest fund managers agreeing with me now, but everyone's ignoring them because, believe me, if people are taking Ray Dalio seriously as well, gold would be at 3,000 already, and my mining stocks would be up like 10, 50, 100, 500x. Kudlow, Fed's T-bill purchases are basically QE. It's funny that they're all starting to admit the truth, and I feel like they feel guilty, morally, and they're saying it to cover their own asses when shit hits the fan, because when it does, it's going to be so horrendous. They're going to say, hey, listen, guys, I warned you, don't tar and feather me. That's kind of how I view it. So phase 1 trade deal doomed from the start. The skepticism mounts about purchases. Yeah, like I said, guys, it's not that great. You can read this article. I'm not going to dive any deeper into it. Again, the new USMCA, it's NAFTA light. That's all it is. I'm not going to talk about that. I was making fun of the Peloton bicycle thing. If you're in the newsroom, See, if you're not in the newsroom, you miss out on funny stuff like this. And you should be in the newsroom. Links below the video. So Wall Street lost ground on Tuesday because of the virus. That's what they're blaming it on. Oh yeah, and Greta's there, right? Special child. And it's listen. Oh yeah, and Jamie Dimon was saying that he was all about carbon taxes. That's what it's about, guys. And listen, these corporations, they would love a carbon tax because they pay, let's say, percentage-wise, a small percentage, and they'll pay their carbon footprint. But you have to understand, all that carbon tax, it goes to the government, right? And then the corporations get tax breaks, and then they don't have to pay the taxes. But who pays it? We do, the plebs, the middle class and below, right? And because it'll get passed on to us through all of the prices for goods and services, and then you might actually one day see a direct carbon, it'll be in your utility bills and whatnot. But this is just another form of wealth distribution from the poor and the middle class to the rich, and to bail out the system, the entire stock market and corporations. That's what this really is about. It's not about the climate. They don't give a shit. Listen, guys, I mean, they fly their Lear jets and have their super yachts. If they give up all those things, I'll listen to them. But even then, I won't agree. But the hypocrisy is just ridiculous. And there's just no science backing it up. Absolutely nothing. Guys, plants, a volcano that just erupted put out more carbon emissions than the entirety of humanity in just 1 week. Do you understand that? A volcano that, like a few weeks ago or a month ago, something like that just went off. It's on my Instagram. Emitted more carbon than all of humanity in history with machines or, engines and jets and car engine. It's insane. Coal plants, all the electric plants, they have filters. Guys, in the West, the air is absolutely clean. The waters are clean. It's funny, though, because why doesn't Greta go to China or India? Or even South America, right? Because that's where it's all coming from. Because they don't care. And they know, and they won't. That's also, guys, they're globalists, right? They love China. They're making more than ever off of China. Bose sound system, right? The audio company, closing all retail stores in the U.S. They used to manufacture in the U.S. They started, and now they all manufacture in China, and they're just going to become an online company. It's insane. So what else is going on? Just give me a second to scroll here. I guess we could look at look at this. So Ray Dalio, literally the largest fund manager, right? Well, he created index funds, and he owns Bridgewater. He literally said cash is trash. Buy gold. That is crazy. Now the cynic in me wants to think that, oh, what is this, reverse psychology for the markets? Because this guy and everyone else who for the past decade has been trashing metals, even though it's outperformed the stock market, and mining stocks in this past year have outperformed everything. They've even outperformed crypto. God, the crypto people are annoying. They're the reason why I stopped doing so many videos about crypto. It's the people. They're so stupid and annoying. They're just constantly pumping their own bags. That's all it is. And it's immoral. It's low IQ, and in the comments they leave sometimes, they're so stupid. It's like all the topping. It's all of the talking points. And I'm not even gonna. I digress. It's funny though, because Dalio doesn't think there will be a recession this year, and he said investors should look beyond 2020. Well, here's the thing, guys. The recession, right? It might start this year, but they won't acknowledge it until 2021, right? And right now, everyone does not know how much higher this melt up and how much longer it could go. But everyone knows we're in the final phase, right? We're in the last inning. And there's a part of me that thinks, right, if they just run up the market really, really high, when it drops and has a correction of 15, 20, 30%, it's still going to be overvalued and highly elevated. Meaning the real economy might not feel it for longer just because they ran up and made the bubble so high. And if they do have like some secret cash fund, listen, I don't want to talk about this, but 21 with a T trillion, right, has gone like missing. And I don't want to talk about it. Look it up. Research it yourselves. I posted in the newsroom like yesterday or the day before. Or maybe I'll post that interview after this video in the newsroom. And I don't want to talk about that. But they could stop a market from falling. That's why I think, this is my theory, right, of what's going to happen in the next like 5 years. There won't be like a market crash. It'll just be a huge, well, there will be a crash, initial crash, then they stop it, right? And then it might trade sideways for some years while inflation starts running really high. They do QE, they do MMT, and then it keeps the equity markets it keeps the bubble going for a little bit longer. Except that the real economy is going to really start suffering as people can't pay off their debts, and you start running into some serious noticeable inflation, right? So let's get back to Dalio. Just give it a second.
So we had David Tepper had texted into the show on Friday and suggested right now that you have to be in the market full on. And so the question is whether everybody jumps on the train, everybody gets in full on, and then the problem arises that you're talking about. I think that's most likely. But then the question is when do you jump off the train?
But also the question is, what do you jump into when you jump off the train? And the issue is you can't jump into cash. Cash is trash, okay? Cash is that they're going to, because they're going to print money. What do? You get out.
That's crazy that he is coming out and saying the truth. This is what I've been saying, and everyone else who's been made fun of by the mainstream and all the financial professionals and economists, the gold bugs and the conspiracy theorists. But they're all saying what we've been saying for like 5-10 years, right? And now they want to take credit for it. But they knew. Listen, they all knew. They just all benefited from the bubble, right? And towards the end, they're going to just come out, warn everyone, say what might happen. And then, they think they're going to be in the clear. They had nothing to do with it. But they knew. This entire time. By the way, I have to stop this every few seconds so I don't get hit with the strike. What's funny? They always... I don't know why CNBC does this, but I guess it's good visuals, right? They always sit outside, and then you have the mountains in the background with all the snow. And the interview, so whoever's getting interviewed, they usually don't have a coat on, and you can tell they're cold. It's just funny. It's something I noticed.
Okay, so cash is not going to.
So what do you do?
So what you have to do is you have to have a well-diversified portfolio. And first of all, you have to be global, and you have to have balance. And I think,
See, that sounds a lot like Peter Schiff, right? You need emerging market stocks now and internationals. There's a problem with that, though. I think, yeah, they will, internet, the third world and the second world emerging markets. I do think they will rise after the dollar falls, but I think it's going to be much later. I think it's a little early to jump into those. Even once even once the dollar starts losing its value and the markets start correcting, I think it's going to take many years for the emerging markets to strengthen back up because it's going to be a global depression.
I don't want to grab,
Not financial advice, my personal opinion.
Headline's going to be, again, anyway, is I think that you have to have a certain amount of gold in your portfolio, or you have to have something that's hard. There are 3 monetary systems.
Right, hard assets.
That happen. The first is, in the old days, it had intrinsic value. You'd carry around gold coins. Then we come up with the idea of banks or even central banks. And what they do is they create certificates, we call notes.
All right, we all know this, right? but he's talking. You have to understand, the people who watch him are supposed professionals on Wall Street. And he's explaining the basics to them because they don't teach you this in universities or in public school. Public schools don't teach you anything, but not even in universities they teach you about real money, hard assets, right? In the business school, they might mention it. That's about it. And in economics, they definitely didn't mention it. They didn't even talk about it. They talk about gold as a historic thing, but they never talked about how it's still money and central banks are buying more than ever, right? So, anyways, I don't really have much to say. I mean, except for the fact that if these Wall Street guys and other hedge funds and money managers take his advice as they have been taking it for the past 10 years, we're going to see, if just a small percentage, a fraction of them actually take Ray Dalio's advice and they just put 3, 5, 10% into gold, the metals market is going to go into an explosive bull market. It could even go into a bubble. Like 3,000 gold is nothing at that. So if every hedge fund, right, just put 3% of their capital into gold, just 3, I'm happy with that. Gold could easily go to 10,000 an ounce. Somewhere up there. I mean, don't quote me. I don't really know exactly. But there's so much trillions and trillions circulating out there. You could see $100 spikes in a day. Of course, this isn't going to happen. It's only going to happen when people become fearful and this bubble, the stock market bubble, finally gets pricked and the economy rolls over. Now, I'll talk about that. If the top is in again towards the end.
That are claims on those things. One. Then you have a fiat monetary system, which means that you can print whatever amount. Appreciation of the exchange rate and the printing of money is not effective in either of those cases. Go next to it. Someday when it, I would say Libra or something which has more stable value, has got more potential. But also, who's going to do the buying? Central bankers and others. What are they going to hold as reserves? What has been tried and true? Are they going to hold digital Bitcoin? They're going to hold gold. That is a reserve currency, and it's been a reserve currency for 1,000 years. That is a reserve currency. Are they going to hold digital Bitcoin? They're going to hold.
He's just trashed Bitcoin. By the way, guys, the world's not going to go on some sort of Bitcoin standard. Their central banks all around the world are creating their own cryptos. They don't like BTC, right? So stop lying to yourselves. Like, this was obvious. You think they're not going to go down without a fight. And matter of fact, they could put so many regulations and make it illegal that it will affect the price negatively in the future. That's why I always say Bitcoin and crypto is extremely risky. All right.
Gold.
By the way, the trolls in the comment section, there's way more upside in mining stocks than there is in any cryptocurrency right now. That's what I truly believe personally. Listen, all those mad gains in 2017, it's over, all right? It's over. The bubble's over. Can we see something like that again? Maybe. But I have a feeling it's a little late. Like, it already happened. And the regulations, they don't want cryptos going back up into a bull market. They might let Bitcoin go up a little bit, right? But are we ever... It might, cryptos might go up if there's capital flight and the regulators lose control, but I doubt that's going to happen. So I'm just keeping it real, right? The mining stocks is where the life-changing money is. It's not in crypto. You can trade crypto, speculate, but... And by the way, this is how stupid crypto people are. They're like, well, gold only goes up like, $100 or a couple $100 a year. Yeah, and the mining stocks go up hundreds of %. And you could leverage trade on the stock market, guys. You could use options. There's 3x bull ETFs. It's better than going on some scam crypto exchange. I mean, there's a few that aren't scams out there. You get 100 leverage X, but you're going to get stopped out and lose all your money. And those altcoins, they rally for like 2 days and then dump in like 2 minutes. So good luck with that. Like, people think like crypto is where you get those mad gains. It's not true. It's in the stock market. I've always made more money in the stock market. It's just that people in crypto don't know that because they never started out in the equity markets.
That is a reserve currency, and it's been a reserve.
Now, I'll give the crypto people a benefit of the doubt. Yes, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Binance, whatever, they all went up like insane amounts. But the likelihood of that happening again is much smaller than the more assured bet that the mining stocks are going to go up like those altcoins did in 2017. All right. I think it's more safe and more likely, and you have better odds with the mining stocks than you do with altcoins. All right, guys, that's all I'm trying to say.
Reserve currency for 1,000 years. I don't want to. I know this is going to be the headline of gold. I want to emphasize a bit of gold is a diversifier. Okay, and that's the advice I can give. I know I'm going to come out of here like
that entire time of what you were just making. Maybe there was so much of a lack of demand in the private sector following the financial crisis that it was able to absorb all of that. But coming to us now with that,
yeah, look at that headline down there. Dalio, Bitcoin too volatile to be a store of wealth. Pretty much.
At the risk of saying.
But can it be? Yes. During very stressful times, and if people want to get their money around the world, and rich people usually are the ones to do that, then yeah, that'll push the price up when they all do that at once. And then after that, you'll get your middle class or retail investors who have a little bit of money. But betting on the fact that it's going to make you rich is... It's very speculative, guys. That's all I'm trying to say.
Kind of like the boy who cried wolf too many times. I'm not saying you did, but we all were. The death of the bond vigilante. It's been well documented for the past 10 years. Now you're saying is the time to work.
I think it's totally different. Well, I would say.
Yeah, the boy who cried wolf, like Peter Schiff and the rest of them, right? They were right. They're going to be right. It's just that they're always so early. Like being a decade early and missing out on a equity, the largest equity bull market ever, sucks, right? And no one's going to listen to you after that. So, you know, these guys are smart. They're also insiders, right? So you have to listen to them when they're coming out with warnings that they've never came out with before. He's never talked about gold like this. I mean, yeah, he did in his book, but he did in his book. And his book's like probably 6 years old now. So, nah, he's talked about it. It's just falls on deaf ears when everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. And when you're in a bubble, it's weird. It's like you don't see it, you don't know it. But they do. They're not stupid.
When we are dealing, more can you push that? What does the next 5 years look like? Basis points of rate cuts, oh, then you can't do that, you go to QE, right?
Right.
And
we're having trouble
our
normalizing.
stimulant,
Right.
we don't have much stimulant. We have people at each other's throats over the wealth gap. And so what will the next downturn be? And also, why would you want to hold those? Why do you want to hold those at some point? I don't know. I could be wrong. I've been wrong plenty in my life. So I could be wrong. I'm just trying to describe, like, tell me why that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no reason to hold bonds. Listen. Okay, so
let's start with the market. Equity valuations. How do they look to you, given the
on.
economic fundamentals?
All right. So even when Ray Dalio sounds like me, it's kind of creepy because you know we're definitely coming up on the end here. You guys have to understand with the dollar milkshake theory, who's gonna buy government debt? Central banks are. How are central banks gonna buy bonds? And you know they're talking about the bond vigilantes. How are they gonna? Because if the yields on the bonds, because the bond market's been in a bull market for like 30 years now. If the yields on the bonds rise and the bonds go into a bear market, so the price of the bond falls, right? The actual value of the bond falls, and the yields go up, what is that going to do? It's going to blow up everything. All these corporations with the CLO debt, right? And everything else. And the consumer. Everyone. Everything's drowning in debt. So they have to keep interest rates low. And then, not just that, that blows up the federal budget and the government. They won't be able to pay everything. Imagine when the feds have to start laying people off, right? And 30% of like the U.S. economy is like in some fashion, way, or form funded by the government. So they have to keep interest rates low. But what happens if they keep them low forever or even go negative? Well, the only person to buy those bonds would be central banks. How do they buy them? They print money. And then that money goes into the system. And eventually, all of that cash is going to rush out of the equity markets, out of debt vehicles, right? And these corporations sitting on all this debt eventually will start defaulting as well. Because as inflation rises and rises, what happens is the consumer dies. People stop buying things. Or first they buy things, but eventually they can't afford anything. I mean, when a loaf of bread's like $10 or $20, but your wages haven't increased because because companies aren't making money. They don't have profits. They're zombified, right? And small businesses aren't zombified. They don't get any help. They just all go out of business. What do you think is going to happen? And not just that, then there's the political divide. Then there's all these millennials who are like, hey man, you boomers had it great and we're poor. We can't buy homes. We can't pay off our student debt. There's this huge income inequality, right? So, and that's just going to usher in more socialism. And it's the worst. Listen, guys. This is the worst. In the next 5 to 10 years, it's like everything coming together is the worst possible scenario. That's why they're going to keep the music going as long as humanly possible, because even the elite are afraid of what's going to happen. They might have, you know, New Zealand, all their new homes, but in bunkers. But I mean, the entire the financialization of the entire globe and all this endless credit and debt it's just not, it's gonna end, and it's in the higher the stock market goes and the longer this does go, the more painful it's gonna be. I think they're just so afraid that when it does go, that they will lose complete control of the entire system, right? That's why I say with these mining stocks, when they start going up, start taking profits and buying real things, right? Buy a home, buy a farm, try to become self-sustained, buy solar panels, buy a windmill, I don't know, buy a boat. So I think I'm done for today. Gold price looks great. My last video was still on point, right? Let's take a look at the gold price. You know, I do trade other equities. That's for the private members. So this is a 6-hour chart. Looks like it's ready to break out and rebound. Look, silver's on the right here. It's going to get back above 18. Gold, guys, this is, I mean, this sort of looks like a giant bull flag again. But this also looks like inverse head and shoulders again. Or if the price could get back up to 1570, then you're going to get a giant cup and handle. And then a breakout to the upside. Alright? And this entire price action right here is just consolidation. It's a spring winding up, and it's going to shoot the price up, more likely. Why do I say that? Because my all-time high call is still in effect. Yes, the S&P hit... Where's my other chart? I don't know. What did the S&P hit? The S&P hit 3,342.40, somewhere around there. 3,340. All right, so I called all-time high at 3,220. I'm off 120 points. That used to be a decent size, but with the market cap this big and the market this big, it's not. I'm still close enough to be able to say, hey, I called it. Are we there yet? Well, stand by for my next video. I'll make a video tomorrow and we'll do more TA. Alright guys, smash some likes, leave anything in the comment section, go to my website if you're interested in the private group. You know, I share the indicators I use. Well, I let you guys know what I use, and then you guys could download them. I share my own trades. I do research on mining stocks, and we all share information. It's a great community, and we also cover the news. We look at the news for the mining stocks, and if you're interested in it, go to my website. Until next time.